Hi everyone. This is a relatively short summary of reviewing 2-3 individual induction plan. This also applies for any year one submissions of individual induction plans or subsequent submissions. This is simply the first one that we run to typically in the school year. And so what I've done is I've clicked on this page, 2-3 individual induction plan, and you'll see that there is a discussion based upon the video information. And down below that, we have a brief introduction to the individual induction plan. I know that you're aware of this, but I always like to show it because sometimes it helps me to go back and think, okay, this is what we're looking for. So as you all know, prior to starting an inquiry, each participating teacher must have their individual induction plan reviewed and approved before they begin. There are a few reasons for this that I'm sure that you know. This piece of structuring their inquiry can go a long way towards making it successful. How well targeted is their question? Do they have enough resources before they even start or as they begin to move forward in order to help them be successful? Do they know what outcomes it is specifically that they're looking for? So if we can get really well targeted during this piece, it tends to definitely support participating teachers as they move forward into their inquiry. What I've brought up on the screen now is an exemplar of an individual induction plan, 2-3. Will there be variation in these and how they're constructed? Yes. But again, we're going to go back to, is it well targeted? Is the participating teacher being clear? So as you know, there are certain areas highlighted, and these are the only ones that need to be completed on this initial submission of the IIP or individual induction plan. So let's take a look. As you recall, and as you well know, this is to follow upon the participating teacher's self-assessment. They've had a couple of different opportunities. If they're year one, they've done Module B, where they've gone through and thought about their teaching, produced a KWO, had an observation, and some deep conversations with their support provider. If they're in year two, they haven't done Module B, but for both year one and year two, note that number one here says, based on the data, the self-assessment in the continuum of teaching practice. So as the teachers have moved forward in this self-assessment, we're hoping that what sort of comes to the surface is some areas that they really want to investigate in terms of their teaching practice. So the first question is asking teachers to describe, based on the information that came from the self-assessment, which CSTP will they focus on. They can have 2 or 3 of these. If they have 1, it's fine, but we want it to be very specific based on a CSTP. Number 2, develop a focus question. This is the piece that can be most challenging for participating teachers and for support providers. What we're looking for in this question is, the very first thing we're looking for is that it is an open-ended question. It is not a yes/no. It is not a, will teaching specific strategies to my students support them in better understanding the skills of basketball? The answer to that is probably yes. What we're looking at is based upon teacher practice. They're continually asking themselves, how will implementing certain strategies impact my students? So let's take a look at this one. How will implementing strategies, okay, which strategies? Ones that rely upon student choice, independence, and something the participating teacher is referring to as teach as facilitator, impact, and look how specific it is, student performance on the CASE. Does it have to be quite that specific? No. If this teacher would have said impact student performance or impact student achievement, that would be fine too. This teacher has it very specific. They're looking for certain strategies and how it will impact student performance specifically on the CASE. Number 3 goes back to, which specific elements will your question focus upon? So up here in 1, the teacher may have a number of different focus areas, but now they're going to narrow it down to a very specific question. which narrows it down to a specific CSTP. Notice it says, make note of your current placement on the continuum of teaching practice. So this person has written a specific CSTP that will be addressed. Her current practice is at the level of exploring. And what does that pertain to? The descriptor under exploring is this information here. Does the teacher need to include that? No, this particular teacher did. So if they said my practice is currently at the level of exploring, that would be fine. Number 4, this can be challenging also for participating teachers and support providers. We want to know, notice what the question says, what changes do you expect or hope to see in student achievement as a result of all of this hard work? And so when teachers, participating teachers, produce a response that is somewhat vague, what it means is we're not really sure when the information will be considered to be successful. So let's take a look at one that isn't quite specific enough. So what I've included in bold here is a result, number 4, that says students will score higher on the CASE. Well, that is an outcome. It is somewhat measurable. The more specific we can help teachers be, the more they can then reflect back on the end. Were these strategies successful enough? Did 5% of my students increase by 2%? Well, what a great conversation to have. Would you consider those strategies to be successful for all of your students to the degree that you had hoped? So I hope this isn't confusing, but what we're looking for is a fairly specific result so that teachers at the end can say, yes, some of those strategies were effective for some of my students, and I'm going to continue to work towards how to support 100% of my students scoring proficiently on the CASE math. When we get to the action plan for this initial submission of the IIP, we only expect 5 and 6 to be completed. 7 and 8, 7 is what they decide to do with the information they learned from number 6, how they decided to implement it in their classroom. And 8 is how did that impact student achievement in a measurable way. So for this particular portion, we're looking at primarily what kind of research are they going to be using. And here's what we're looking for. Is it diverse? Is every single entry under the action plan discussed with colleague? Or are the teachers using a diversity of resources? Are they reading books, speaking with colleagues, looking online for different resources? It would be even more helpful if they located some of those resources. Why do we ask them to do this initially? Because now we know they're beginning to dig in to their question and their measurable results. It may be that they're not finding what they need for resources or their research. We want to know that now. So if they can go ahead and dig into some of these, they're going to have a much better idea when they talk to their support provider. Do I have enough that I can really begin to implement some different strategies? This is essentially what we're looking for in the IIP. Again, will there be some variation? Yes. What are the critical pieces? That the focus question is not a yes-no question, but rather pertains to teaching strategies in some way. If the teacher can be specific, that's great. That's helpful to the support provider. And we want to know that they're looking at the impact on student performance. Measurable results. This one is extremely measurable. We want to know that it's something more precise than all the students will improve. 100% of students will improve, and on what? In their ability to write a thesis, in their scores on a particular assessment. What really are they looking for that at the end they'll be able to say, my data shows to me that these strategies were successful in impacting my students directly. I hope this helps. Certainly if you have any questions or you need support, there are individuals, your hub leaders, people at the County Office of Education to support you as you begin to look at these on behalf of participating teachers and support providers. One last tagline regarding reviewing and submitting comments. Under the assignment, you'll notice there's a purpose, and we can click on this portion here to get the actual document. As you know, when the document opens up, it is just the IIP portion of the inquiry, nothing more. The remaining documents can be found in another submission. All the areas highlighted are the areas we've been talking about. There is not a fact verification form for the individual induction plan, this initial submission. So you will want to send comments back to the participating teacher within Haiku or to their support provider, depending upon how you handle it in your district, whether you comment back directly to the participating teacher or to the support provider. So the sign-off would be that actual grade, that X or P, that you put into Haiku to assure the teacher that their question, their measurable expectations, everything is ready to go. So you may want to determine within your own process if the support providers are somehow inserting grades, which is atypical. You will want to ensure that you are the one that submits the grade that gives the participating teacher the go-ahead for proceeding with their inquiry. Thank you.